Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about Alfred Jarry's play Ubu Roi, or Ubu the King. In French, Ubu Roi. That's probably bad French pronunciation, but there you are. So Ubu Roi is an interesting play because this is the first modern play, capital M modern, that really introduces the grotesque. So Jarry was coming out of a context of French symbolism. So symbolism was a literary movement. Basically, they were really interested, as the name implies, in symbols, in creating deep and transcendent meaning through reliance on images that carried significant weight. It was a very cerebral literary movement. It was a very artistic literary movement. And it was a very refined literary movement. Then Ubu Roi comes along. And Ubu Roi is the opposite of those things. The grotesque it actually picks up really from a tradition that was very prominent in medieval Europe of literature or theater or folk culture in general that focuses on the scatological, that focuses on violence, that focuses on eating. It's an earthy, sort of bodily type genre. A lot of fart jokes, a lot of poop jokes, a lot of rape jokes often. Although there's not many of those in Ubu the King, there are some jokes about sex, but primarily this is a version of the grotesque built around flatulence, feces, eating, greed, and violence. A lot of violence, gratuitous violence. So it comes partially out of this sort of medieval tradition of the grotesque and the carnivalesque, as Mikhail Bakhtin, the Russian literary critic, would call it. It also comes partially out of the puppet theater tradition, like Punch and Judy shows, for instance. And Jarry is really the first person in the modern drama. So modern drama in the sense of like Ibsen, Shaw, Strindberg, people like this, starting around mid to late 1800s, going into the mid 1900s. Jarry's the first person to really put the grotesque on stage and make that central to the performance. So you can get a sense of this actually from Act 1, Scene 1. And I'm gonna read you the whole act, or the whole scene rather, because it's an interesting one, and it gives you a lot of the sense of how playful, but also how sort of bodily the grotesque works. So the play, according to the introductory stage direction here, the play takes place in Poland. In other words, nowhere. So Jarry has this not geographically or historically or culturally grounded impression of Poland. Yes, there are real place names involved. There are some references to actual historical kings of Poland, but mainly it's just sort of divorced from reality. So, Act 1, Scene 1 involves Papa Ubu and Mama Ubu. Papa Ubu starts. Shitsky. That's the first word of the play. According to the notation here, this is in the Norton Anthology of Drama. According to the footnote, in Jarry's original French text, the play's first word is merdre, a distortion of merde, meaning shit. Again, my French is bad, because I don't speak French. So the English language translator, David Ball, in this instance, has translated merdre as shitsky, which is kind of nicely Polish-y, I guess. Put ski on the end of it. Anyway, so Papa Ubu, shitsky, Mama Ubu. Oh, such language. Papa Ubu, thou art a big bad boy. Papa Ubu says, what stoppeth me from slaying thee, Mama Ubu? Mama Ubu says, it is not I, Papa Ubu, it is someone else who should be assassinated. Papa Ubu says, by my green candlestick, I understand not. Mama Ubu says, what, Papa Ubu, are you happy with your lot? Papa Ubu says, by my green candlestick, Shitsky, my dear, verily, verily, I am happy. A man could be happy with less. Captain of the Dragoons, an officer of the confidence of King Wenceslas, decorated with the Order of the Red Eagle of Poland and former King of Aragon. What more could you want? Mama Ubu says, what? You who were once King of Aragon now think it's good enough to march in a parade at the head of 40 attendants armed with cabbage cutters, when after the crown of Aragon you could place the crown of Poland on your noggin? Papa Ubu says, ah, Mama Ubu, I can't understand a word you say. Mama Ubu says, you're so dumb. Papa Ubu says, by my green candlestick, King Wenceslas is very much alive, and even assuming he dies, does he not have swarms of children? Mama Ubu says, what's stopping you from massacring the whole family and taking their place? Papa Ubu, ah, Mama Ubu, you are insulting me and will soon get dumped in the lobster pot. Mama Ubu, ah, miserable wretch, if I get dumped in the lobster pot, who would then mend the seat of your pants? Papa Ubu, hey, come on, don't I have an ass like everyone else? Mama Ubu, if I were you, it's that very ass I'd want to put on a throne. You could get infinitely rich, eat stuffed cabbage all the time, and drive through the streets in a horse and carriage. Papa Ubu, if I were king, I'd have me a big cape like the one I had in Aragon, the one those rascally Spaniards impudently stole from me. Mama Ubu, you could also get an umbrella and a big pea jacket that goes all the way down to your heels. Papa Ubu, oh, I'll give in to the temptation. For Shitsky's sakeski, for sakeski's Shitsky, if I ever meet him somewhere in the woods, he'll have a hard time of it. Mama Ubu, oh good, Papa Ubu, now you have become a real man. Papa Ubu, oh no, a captain of the Dragoons massacring the King of Poland? Never, I'd die first. Mama Ubu, as an aside, oh Shitsky. To Ubu, so you will remain poor as a church rat, Papa Ubu. Papa Ubu, odds belly Zooks, by my green candlestick, I'd rather be poor as a good thin rat than rich as a wicked fat cat. Mama Ubu, what about the cape, and the umbrella, and the great big pea jacket? Papa Ubu, well, what about them, Mama Ubu? Who needs them? He exits, slamming the door. Mama Ubu, Krapsky, Shitsky. He's an old meanie, but Krapsky, Shitsky, I do think I've shaken him. Thank God and myself. In a week I may be Queen of Poland. So that's the opening scene. Obviously a lot of scatological language. Shitsky is one of the most commonly used words in the play. We have, these bodily elements. Mama Ubu threatening to stop, threatening that she won't be there to mend the seat of Ubu's pants, and he says, don't I have an ass like everyone else? These kinds of things. And the things that Mama Ubu presents to try and tempt Papa Ubu to kill the king are things like eating sausage rolls and enjoying riding around in a carriage. These are the things that tempt Papa Ubu. He is, over the course of the play, an incredibly greedy character who repeatedly refuses to spend any sort of money. So he does become king. He does kill Wenceslas. He does kill 2 of Wenceslas's kids. He doesn't manage to kill the 3rd. And he becomes king. And his advisors are like, Papa Ubu, you've got to give money to the people, or they will overthrow you. And he's like, no, I want to get rich. I'm not going to give them any money. But then, interestingly enough, once the advisors say, but if you don't give them any money, they won't pay taxes and you won't get any more money. Papa Ubu's like, all right, we're going to spend a ton. We're going to spend a ton of money. I forget how many millions it is that he spends just giving money to people, basically. So, but he also makes very clear to the peasants and the townsfolk that he is giving them this money on the premise that they will then pay him taxes. So he is this character who can be swayed very easily by promises of food, promises of money, and he commits a massive amount of violence. Like there's a scene where he just slaughters a ton of nobles to take their property. And when the judges, then he goes to the judges and says, all right, you're going to keep judging, find people guilty so that I can take their land and you can have part of their land. And they're like, we can't do that. That's not how it works. And so he kills all the judges. The entire last half of the play is basically spent in this sort of drawn out battle between King Ubu and his forces and Buggerless, one of Wenceslas's children, the one who manages to survive. Buggerless goes to the Tsar of the Russians, who then invades Poland to try and overthrow Ubu and put Buggerless back on the throne. Essentially, if you're clever and know your Shakespeare, you may have recognized this already. This is Macbeth, right? Starting from the beginning where Mama Ubu, Lady Macbeth, is trying to convince Papa Ubu, Macbeth, to kill the king and take his place. And then we have the invasion of a larger foreign neighbor in order to support a claimant to the throne, the child of the murdered king, etc., etc. This is a grotesque version of Macbeth. There it is. But the other thing that's interesting about this play is the performance style, because you couldn't really play Ubu Roi straight. So Jarry had to come up with some kind of system that would fit the grotesque style of this performance, that would make sense with what's actually going on in the play. So what the Norton editors explain in the introduction is this. The puppet theater was also an important inspiration for Jarry's stage design. His characters were written to be one-dimensional and simple, an effect that Jarry enhanced with the actors' costumes and style of acting and speaking. He created full-body costumes and masks that significantly reduced the mobility of those wearing them. Ubu's entire body was covered by an egg-shaped stiff costume, eliminating the actor's ability to convey subtle points with facial expressions, gestures, or poses. To make the performance even more stylized, Jarry was also instructed his actors to speak unnaturally. For this purpose, he created what he called an acoustic mask, demanding that Ubu deliver his lines in a staccato fashion, giving each syllable equal emphasis. The appearance, movements, and speech of Ubu were thus reduced to a set of mechanical expressions. Ubu was no longer a character taken from life, it was a plainly artificial and crude creation. Now, this is a very stylized drawing, but this poster from the original production run gives you a bit of a sense of what the character of Papa Ubu would have looked like. Now, this is actually sort of stylized based on medieval drawings or medieval art. We get this very sort of blocky, heavy outline style in a lot of medieval art. And again, because the grotesque is a tradition going back to the medieval period in Europe, that's a very, I think, intuitive connection to make in terms of the visuals here. But again, this play is devoted to the idea of the grotesque, whereas mostly in medieval literature and theater or folk performance, when you got the grotesque, it was incidental rather than the purpose of what was going on.